Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today we're going to look at an interesting question. What is the relationship between INFJs and conspiracy theories? Does the INFJ type have a particular function stack that makes it more or less likely that they will be tempted to embrace such theories? Before I move on to my topic, can you see this? You've heard of this, haven't you? This is the Ecstatic Soul. My book on the INFJ came out a few months ago. It's doing really well. People are loving it. If you're looking for an in-depth investigation of the INFJ, getting to the next level, if you have an understanding of the function stack of the INFJ, you think you understand the INFJ, you've read articles online, but you want to get to a deeper understanding of the INFJ consciousness, this is the book to get. Less than $10, available in paperback and ebook format at all the Amazon links in the description box below. If you have any question, if you need any further information, you just let me know and I'll be happy to answer you. Conspiracy theory, a true, I was going to say disease of our time, but at the same time, we all know that, in the world there are conspiracies, and there's plenty of them, but conspiracy theory and, what I would describe more generally as a discourse that seeks to delegitimize the official version of things, has many abuses, of course. We know that official discourses are always packaged in a way that is meant to soothe the masses. The problem with conspiracy theory is that it tends to embrace an alternative account and subscribe unthinkingly almost to its truth, and will defend its truth tooth and nail, even in the presence of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. And it's notoriously difficult, perhaps impossible, to discuss with someone who holds such a theory. Are INFJs particularly prone to conspiracy theory, conspiratorial thinking? I would like to say that on the face of it, the answer is no. The answer is no, relative to many other types, and particularly types whose FE function is either weak or non-existent. Now, to explain why I think this and why I think the FE function is very important in this case, I think it's enough to remember that FE is oriented to the social world. And from this it follows that FE is either drawn to harmonize with the general prevailing opinion, at least find a way of being peaceful with it, or dictate this harmony. If you're an FE dominant, sometimes you'll be tempted to impose the harmony yourself, or to place yourself at the center of the harmonious circle. If I put it like this, it almost sounds as if I'm saying that an FE user is bound to feel peer pressure, and peer pressure is not a good thing. But actually, when you have no choice but to listen to what other people have to say, when you have no choice, functionally speaking, but to give some importance to what the general ideas are being discussed, and to give them the credit they deserve, even if it is ultimately to disagree with it. There's something very positive in this. At least in a democracy, there's something positive in this. You might make an opposite case if you're talking about a dictatorship. But in a democracy where, at least in theory, there is free discourse possible, that people can talk, they can be argumentation oriented to understanding rather than coercion, to be naturally attuned to the tone of the discussions is something that is going to protect you to some extent, in principle, against the dangers of solipsism and getting trapped in your own subjectivity. Because it seems to me that prior to any discussion of the rationality of espousing this or that particular version of a particular event, whether it's a conspiracy, whether it's just a historical fact, the person who is drawn into conspiratorial theories is a person who gets lost in their subjectivity. It's, the extreme obviously would be a schizophrenic, but you don't have to actually be a schizophrenic to start flirting with confusing the reality with the projections of your mind. And almost systematically, the origin of that is when you're letting a subjective function take over your psyche. Now, FE is not subjective. FE is intersubjective, which means that FE takes into account the opinions and thoughts of other people by default. The weakness is if you're surrounded in your social life by people who are also into conspiracy theories, then maybe FE will not help you very much. But most people will be surrounded by lots of different kinds of people, and the tenor of the conversations and what will come out of those conversations will be maybe not an enforcement of the official version, because again, the official version is often not quite the truth and full of holes. But at least what will come out in that is that there is peaceful and reasonably polite disagreements between different versions, and therefore a skepticism to all versions, an approach to different versions of historical events that scrutinizes each with a certain kind of measured attention to detail, empiricism, and resisting jumping to conclusions, essentially. And again, that's a very positive aspect of FE. So what I would have to say in the case of INFJs is that the more FE is repressed, almost mathematically, almost geometrically, the more likely it is that subjectivity will reign, and that one might, among many other things, become a target for conspiratorial thinking. It's very interesting to look at types that are not INFJ or other functions. I think, interestingly, that FI users, for instance, people on the FIT axis have a different functional relationship to the temptation of conspiratorial thinking, because if you think of an INTJ, for example, INTJ might be actually more prone to conspiratorial thinking than INFJs because of the typically weak FE, but also because of the fact that TE can easily be made subservient to NI known to often have a tunnel vision or be drawn to that. That's both its strength and its weakness. FI, as in a tertiary position, does not allow its values to be put out in the open and discussed by other people. Like INTJs tend to be very protective of their FI values. At the same time, when TE is made subservient to an NI vision supported value-wise by FI, often what ends up happening, and I do discuss this a little bit in chapters 1 and 2 of my book, which is a book that discusses mostly the INFJ, but also the INTJ, and could be relevant to INTJs if they're interested, is that TE does not come up by itself. T is not a function of reasoning power that just produces its own fuel, if you like. T often, or usually I should say, arises as a function of justification of particular deliberations arrived at by FI on the basis of SE and I contents. First, gathering of information in the external world, mostly not conscious of that if you're an INTJ. The processing by NI, of which the INTJ is very conscious, but that's the risk of the maximal risk of excessive subjectivity is contained in this particular moment of processing of NI. And it can often not be made much more objective through FI because of the nature of FI. Now, when TE is deployed, it's often in a justificatory sense. It's in a sense in which the insight that the INTJ arrived at in relation to a particular topic, in relation to a particular piece of information, is made to fit with the order of the external world. But if TE is really approached as, in some sense, the slave of NI for the INTJ, what might happen is that T is deployed to find every possible solution to making the conspiratorial view fit with the order of the external world. And sometimes when T is deployed in that way, it can be quite powerful, but also quite dangerous if it is wrong-headed, informed by a false perception or an overly subjective perception, and backed up by values that do not directly bear on the facts, which is sometimes the problem with FI in general. So I'd say INTJ is on average a bit more exposed functionally, but if the INFJ does not have very developed FE or slightly repressed FE, there's definitely a risk there. Bringing back, every time going back to the tunnel vision that NI is oriented towards. And, you know, having a tunnel vision is good if your vision is good. If your vision is positive and constructive, it's very good. If you're locked inside your subjectivity and your vision is a little bit distorted, it can be dangerous. So socialize, guys. Always remember socializing. Okay. Consider giving me a like, subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.